Nigel Farage backing Donald Trump's presidential campaign. The Burkin Ban in France. Is it forced liberalism? Rail strikes by Southern Rail staff and the rail fare hike of 1% despite poor services. Are you getting a good service? Gunman wearing a hoodie opens fire in New Cross, Southeast London. How safe are we? International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. Theresa May welcomes it. Today, we are joined by Patrick Vernon, founder of Every Generation Media and 100 Great Black Britons, who will be giving us his insight on some of the top stories from this week in review. Welcome to the show today, and I'm joined by Patrick Vernon. Patrick is the founder of Every Generation Media and 100 Great Black Britons, which develops education programs, publications, and films, and is a leading expert on African and Caribbean genealogy in the UK. Hi, Patrick. How are you today?
Great being on your show today.
Fantastic. And today is, of course, is Carnival Day. Are you going Carnival after this?
Not this year. I haven't really been to Carnival for a couple of years. I'm actually going to see Toots and the Mates Halls tomorrow, actually, down in Clapham with Norman J. So that's going to be my Carnival treat.
Yes. Well, listen, one of the top news this week, as we look at the top, is that Nigel Farage has actually took himself all the way to the United States and is backing Donald Trump presidential campaign. Now, what's your thoughts about, because what he said, I'm here from England, and they're saying that he's the leader of the Brexit campaign.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think for most Americans, they probably don't know who Nigel Farage is anyway, so I don't think he would make that much difference. I think for Donald Trump, it's more of a big issue. The very fact he's probably paid, I imagine he's paid to pay for his airfare for Farage to come over to the US shows how desperate he is to have some of his campaign. Most of the Republican Party are lukewarm in supporting him. Yeah. Quite a few of the Republicans have actually said they're going to vote for Hillary Clinton. His strategy of just basically demonising everyone is starting to backfire. It was very popular at the time during the primaries, but now he's actually running to be leader of the country and, inverted commas, the free world, inverted commas. So I think he's desperate. He's recruited half a dozen African-American political advisors to try and get the black vote. Right. I'm not quite sure what he's doing with the Latino vote, because essentially to win American election, you need to have obviously the white working American class, the middle class, the liberals, young people, gay people, and more importantly, the African Americans and Latinos. Without the African Americans and Latinos, he can't win. Yes. So I'm not quite sure why he's got Farage there, because what's quite clear is the Brexit campaign actually has caused more divisions in Britain after the EU vote, and all it seems to do is create a bigger hornet's nest in America, which has been historically racially divided for centuries.
Yeah. And interesting, Hillary Clinton seemed to actually not put the nail on the head when she says, Nigel Farage, the leader of the Brexit campaign, who actually, what she said, the right word she said was use immigrants as a way of sort of demonizing immigrants. Yeah. She really made it very clear and said that man, Nigel Farage, like an enemy of the state to a certain extent.
Well, I think so, but we have to clarify, Nigel Farage wasn't the leader of the Brexit campaign. That's He was one of the key supporters of Brexit, but in terms of the official Brexit campaign, that was led by Michael Gove, Boris Johnson, Priti Patel, and a whole range of people, and as well as some Labour people involved in that as well, like Gisela Stewart. So Nigel Farage wasn't officially part of the Brexit campaign. He didn't really share the campaign platforms. He created his own campaign.
His own space,
so I think it's quite misleading for him to go over to America to say he's the leader of the Brexit campaign. Right. Obviously, he contributes to the campaign. We know that's well documented now, but it's very misleading. And again, this reflects the lack of political immaturity and insight of Donald Trump.
Yes, and I guess it is for the Americans to decide your fate coming up in November. Now, leading on from that, and what is very interesting, it was that the Burkini Ban in France bans people from wearing a form of swimwear dubbed the Burkini. What is the reason behind it? But what was interesting, Patrick, is this what we call forced liberalism? Some questions is it after the recent violent attacks, kills killing in France, that they're seeing it maybe that women are covering themselves with weapons, or is it just forced liberalism?
Interesting. I mean, the history of France around race is really interesting, which is different compared to Britain. Maybe that's another show in itself, Selborne. But obviously, if you look at the French Constitution, the French Revolution, one of the key things, French as a republic, we have to, and this is the difference between here in Britain where we have a monarchy and a separation of powers. In France, it's a republic, so everyone's French, irrespective of who you are and where you're from. But you know and I know that obviously if you go to France, and especially in areas like Marseille, in Paris, you'll see clear evidence of discrimination affecting particularly North Africans. And even people from the Caribbean from Montserrat and Guadeloupe, which is technically still part of France. Actually, you've probably got more French coming over here to work in Britain than, in terms of black professionals in many ways, because of the issues of discrimination there. So, one of the key concepts of the French Constitution and liberté is about everyone's French, irrespective. The French has never done ethnic monitoring compared to, say, the US or the UK. So there's a liberal concept of how they see race and religion. So when it comes to the burqa ban, that's the way that they've looked at that. But actually what is more suspicious and more dangerous, it's targeting Muslim women. Let's face it. It's a campaign which is about their own civil liberties. And obviously there have been quite a few fatalities and terrorist attacks in France. Obviously we have to condone that. But that doesn't mean by having a ban targeting women that that's going to stop terrorism and IS.
Now, it is very interesting. There's been some talk at the same time that in countries like Saudi Arabia and the Middle East countries, women, of course, cannot dress down into bikini at the same time. So therefore, they have to adhere to the laws of Saudi Arabian and Middle East countries. So therefore, is it France now doing the same thing to a certain extent, in the sense of this is not our tradition, this is not our style of covering up? But at the same time, another person said, that's what lifeguards wear.
Yeah, it's a very complicated. I mean, obviously, in terms of what happens in Saudi Arabia, Middle East, that they have different reasons for that, and that's how they interpret the Quran, rightly or wrongly, how they see how women should dress and cover themselves. But I think the key thing about the French ban, I'm not quite sure if it's a complete ban in France, because what you have is one city where the mayor tried to enforce it. It was taken to court, and the judges ruled out that it was against Muslim women's human rights. So there is a ban, but it's not. The question is, it's an enforceable ban, and there are demonstrations up and down the country in France supporting this against this ban. And I think we have to watch this space. I mean, Sarkozy, who wants to run again as the French leader's prime minister, has made it part of his political campaign that he would have clear legislation to ban the burqa. But again, we're missing the point here. The burqa is not about tackling terrorism. It's simply targeting a section of women, Muslim women, who are often marginalised in most societies in the West.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to hear your views as to whether or not the French is correct or not, or is it forced liberalism? And of course, is it a breach of one's human rights? Now, the next one is about should I call it Corbyn Gate, or not Corbyn Gate, it's called Train Gate. Train Gate. But leading on from Train Gate, it's the rail strikes by railway staff and conductors come off the back of recent shortage to add to the woes that there's been a hike in railway fares coming in January, with Sadiq Khan pushing to nationalise Southern Rail and leader Jeremy Corbyn wanting to nationalise the rail. Could this be a positive move, and is the hike unfair on commuters who cannot even guarantee to get work on time? Because, of course, you see the leader of the Labour Party have to be sitting on the ground, which is disputed by Richard Branson, of course. But is it fair? I mean, every year these hike in fare in train fares, but at the same time people are not getting a better service.
Yeah, I just came back from holiday in Berlin, and I travelled to Berlin by train. So I got a train from London to changed to Paris, and from Paris changed to Berlin. The train service was fantastic. The French railway system, the German railway system, the trains were efficient, cheaper. the cost of travelling is much cheaper compared to London.
Wow.
So historically, that has been a major issue about train fares. We are very expensive. We've got probably one of the most expensive train fares on the planet.
Yes.
And there's been an investment, even though there's a significant investment around the time of the Olympics, especially for the overground system. But for that to, I do believe that we need nationalisation.
Yeah.
We need to have public ownership of key infrastructure, and that includes the rail service. Since the 80s, with the kind of franchising of the rail service, wherever you travel, wherever you live in the country, the service is different. But all services have two things in common. They never run on time, even though it has improved over the years, and it's expensive. But you need primary legislation to nationalise the rail service, and the only government that's going to do that is the Labour government.
So are you then advocating for nationalisation of the railway service, or can it be deemed, as many will say, that it is a step back into the past? Is it not moving forward? Because at the end of the day, the global world is moving away from nationalisation, more into privatisation. But at the same time, we all agree that privatization is looking at the bottom end than the public interest.
Yes. The reason why we had a national public train service, especially from the 1920s, 30s, and particularly at the high point in the 50s and 60s, was to regulate passenger safety, to regulate the cost of travel, and to ensure that there was a national system of travelling wherever you were in the country. I think we've reached a situation in a period of cuts, austerity, the uncertainty where we are in terms of leaving Europe. We need to have more clarity in public ownership of assets to make sure it's for the greater good. So I believe that it's important for us to move forward. I don't see it a step forward, backwards. It's a step forward, basically. Sometimes we have to look in the past to see what worked and what didn't work.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, it is your view as to whether or not we believe that nationalization is the way forward, or privatization with a touch of interest in the public is the way forward. Listen, gunman opens fire on a bus in New Cross, London. Police are searching for the gunman, and the motives are not clear. This was the news over the weekend. Just how safe are we is a question, but the key question is are police initiatives working in London today?
It's a difficult question. I live in Hackney, and I've lived in Hackney for over 20 years, and I've seen the height of gun crime, where I live in Clapton area. It was classed as the murder mile about 10 years ago, because at one stage, in one particular year, there were about half a dozen murders where I lived. And obviously the impact of crime, gun crime, violence has an impact on communities. And I think a great effort has been made, not just by the police, but by the community to work around to tackle issues, systemic issues which affect crime, criminality, which has an impact on people, how people see themselves in society. So I think that's always going to be an ongoing battle. I think the key question now is how does the police work in partnership with the community? And obviously we have to condone all acts of violence and kind of gun crime, because there have been a number of cases over the years where gunmen have shot and killed people innocently, even though they were targeting a particular perpetrator linked to some gang or some activity. So more work needs to be done around that, and without knowing more details about this. But we have to be mindful and careful, because often when we talk about gun crime, the assumption that black people are involved in that.
That's
and so we have to be very careful, because it's not all black men are involved in gun crime, even though there is a degree of proportionality in that. But it's a whole range of young people from different backgrounds involved in that. And also not forget that London, and particularly the UK, has a history of gun crime. Go back to the Cray twins. So don't think it's all about what happened over the last 10 years. It's part of the history of DNA of this country.
That's interesting what you're saying, and I want to just quickly pick up on that point where you say it's not just all black men, but at the same time, Theresa May, do you see her then as a friend of effective policing initiatives? Because, of course, the black community is one that raised a lot of concerns at times about the level of policing and the stereotype as well.
Yeah, so I sat on an inquiry a couple of years ago, chaired by Lord Victor Adwalia. We looked at policing in London, and particularly around mental health, because there was a increase in, like a case like Sean Rigg, other cases whereby black men were caught up in the mental health system and also caught up in the criminal justice system. And I think one of the key issues, I think to be fair to Theresa May, she has raised this issue at a scene, probably one of the very few Home Secretaries at the time, which was Home Secretary, raised this issue about the overrepresentation around stop and search. And she has told the police quite clearly and directly, I'm funding you guys. Why are you targeting and overrepresenting this community? And a recent report that came out a few days ago is actually the police morale has gone down because of her approach over the last few years. There has been a degree of reduction in stop and search in certain parts of London. So I know, for example, in Hackney, stop and search has gone down by about 20-30%. I know that for a fact. But nationally, it's still a big trend and still a big issue. And campaigns like Stop Black Lives Matter articulate and still raise that this is still a big concern affecting the community. So I think more work needs to be done. I think Theresa May, as a Prime Minister now, needs to ensure that the government is taking this issue seriously.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, on to our final one is that Theresa May also welcomed the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. That recent report came out. And Patrick, also, you are the founder of Every Generation Media, 100 Great Black Britons, and you have been doing a lot of work in this area. Before you go into that, sort of give me an idea of what you do in a certain extent regarding your profession.
Well, I started Every Generation about 14 years ago, and it was really about trying to promote black history and heritage, but also about family history and family genealogy. And the question when it comes to the black communities has always been of identity. So where you come from, Jamaica, Barbados, or Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, or born 3-4 generations here, the issue of identity. We're exploring our issues around identity, and so I've looked at the whole aspect of family genealogy and family history as a way of looking at identity, how we can learn from the past, how we can engage with young people around exploring that identity as well. So that's one of the key things that I do around that, and that's done through workshops, events, articles, doing films, working with authors. I've published quite a few books with different aspects of black history, identity, and looking at the aspect around diaspora. What is the diaspora of different diaspora communities? People use the word migrant, but it's actually diaspora is probably more appropriate because we're interrelated. We're in a global economy. We're interrelated. Whether the diaspora is in Jamaica or the wider diaspora of Africa, we're all connected.
So tapping in now into the International Convention, in a few statements, I mean, what has been the powerful results and recommendations of this report?
So the UN committee, every 5 years, they do a country report. So all the signatory countries connected with the UN, they do a review. They review issues around equality and race equality. So the last time this review was done was around about 2011. So the review that came out literally a few days ago highlighted, and the part of the review is the government does official report. They go to Geneva, they make the case, say what they've done and what they haven't done, and then you have NGOs, and actually the Runnymede Trust led the NGO negotiations, conversations to say this. They produced an independent report highlighting key issues affecting black and minority communities in Britain, issues around stop and search, issues around hate crime, the fallout of Brexit, but more importantly, that since 2010, with the coalition government and the current Conservative government, there is no national strategy of tackling racial inequalities in Britain. The only national strategy that we have to date is around prevent, and that's targeting Muslim community around terrorism. That is, inverted commas, the only strategy around race.
So therefore, we can say then, ladies and gentlemen, that the International Convention on the Elimination of Forms of Discrimination, Racial Discrimination, is out. And Patrick, can you just just say where can people find this report?
So the report's on the Equality Human Rights Commission website. Also, it's on the Runnymede Trust website. But the most important thing for your viewers is that one of the key recommendations in the report said has recognised that the UN decade of African descent, which is 2015 to 2024, they've made a recommendation to the British government that they need to develop a national strategy and an action plan looking at the issues affecting people of African descent in Britain, which is quite fundamental. It means that the British government needs to not only look at the wider issues around race equality, they need to look at the experiences of black people in Britain around employment, the NHS, around criminal justice, around housing, education, business. And I think we need to put pressure on the government now to follow this recommendation and to develop an action plan, but do it in conjunction with a whole range of black organisations and civil societies to make sure that that works and meets our needs.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Patrick. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was very insightful. I want to thank you so much for joining In Review. And of course, let us hear your news as well, your big news coming up to the end of each week on In Review by emailing us at info@silburn.com. I want to thank Patrick Vernon from Everyday, founder of Every Generation Media, was joining us today. Thank you, Patrick.
No problem.
Any last word for the
and people enjoy the carnival, be safe, and that's it really, yeah.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.